Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here. I believe it's a weekend for Dubai. So let's spice up this evening just a tad bit. You know, I was looking at that wonderful presentation of Hamaria Free Zone and wondering, you know, here you have such amazing facilities. As you're landing into Dubai, you can see roads, beautiful roads, construction just about beginning. Well, in our country, we have a completely different thing. We have houses coming up first and the roads follow. And it's the developers who also make all the roads, isn't it, Rajesh? But I must say that for all of us in India, Dubai literally feels like India's best and the most planned city, because most people, of course, consider it as a home away from home. And for all of us Indians who are living in Dubai, I've been doing real estate for now 5 years, and the number of questions which come from NRIs are fabulous. They're also very, very unique questions, and they depend so much on credible news channels and what we tell them. So whatever we say, we weigh very deeply, that, you know, our advice is taken very seriously. So if anybody is investing in real estate, then we have to make sure that they take the right decision. So we have two shows, Urban Reality and First Time Home Buyer. But coming to this evening, the purpose is extremely simple. Just to, you know, a lot has happened in India. A lot is happening with the new government. There's GST, which everyone's heard about, which is, you know, right now an extremely painful process. If you ask businesses, not in front of the camera, but behind the camera, they will tell you. However, everyone realizes that they have to follow GST, and it's great for the country. And we will see probably the economy picking up sooner than later with the GST effects coming, because it's a wonderful thing which has happened in India. But the other more important thing is RERA, Real Estate Regulation Act. For anybody buying in Dubai, this is nothing new, because this is a very regulated economy and developers know how to follow rules in India. Everyone's grappling how to do it. Buyers have a newfound confidence, and this evening we'd like to talk about that. We would like to call my first two panelists, Yudhish Singh. He's Principal Associate, Kocher & Co. Yudhish has been on a couple of my shows, very, very heated shows. Young lawyer, and he's saying, oh my God, thank you for calling me to Dubai. At least I get a break from RERA. I said, no, you're not getting a break from RERA. Here too, you have to talk about RERA. So Yudhish, come join us. Our second panelist is Agnello Rajesh, Chairman St. Agnello's. Now we have him every time on a RERA panel simply because of one thing, because even before RERA came, all his projects were RERA compliant. So we're wondering what, you know, how did he do it and what value he can add with that. And I can see that a lot of audience is Indian, and they would probably want to buy something at home or already have a property at home. So we will open the floor for Q&As, just, you know, after I have grilled and toasted these two gentlemen on my left and right. All right, so Yudhish, I think the first question to ask is that you've studied the law deeply. What did you think when RERA came into place? I mean, I was actually astounded by the Finance Ministry's press release the day RERA was notified on 1st May. It said 76,000 builders in India will now have to follow Real Estate Regulation Act. I did not even know, Yudhish, that there were 76,000 registered companies in building and construction. Did you know that?
No. To be honest, it's been a humongous task. The law itself is new. Everybody's grappling with it. It's the, you see, land is a state subject, and this is the first time that a pan-India legislation has come out to enforce the contractual obligation between the developer, the allottee, and regulate the real estate agent. So the task ahead is unprecedented. There are a lot of teething issues which are coming out. Dilution of certain definitions such as ongoing projects by various states remains a primary concern. But in the long run, this was a law which was very much required by our country. We know about the number of fraudulent operations that have happened, things that have come to the light, things which are pending before the Supreme Court this week in terms of the JP insolvency matter. So The law will take time, but it will be effective. The concern is the efficacy of the law should not be diluted by diluting the rules of the states.
Absolutely. Well, there are some states, Rajesh, which have come out with, pretty much they've copied the Central Act. Some states have actually dilution, if at all you call it dilution, is only for ongoing projects where developers is saying that you cannot have any law which is retrospective. But all new projects, any which way, have to be now RERA registered and have huge penalties for any delays, etc. You tell us, I mean, you know, how have you seen, does RERA give you more confidence of doing business in India now? And how is it going to change the landscape?
Well, RERA for India is a welcome step by the government, and being in a democratic country, it is the government's responsibility to ensure that none of their people are fleeced by a few handful of entrepreneurs who call themselves as developers or builders. So I think RERA is the game changer, and post-independent India, for the first time in a business which has seen muscle power and a lot of illegal wealth being used for doing the business, it's been put to a stop by the authority, and this is a welcome change. A lot of people who are first-time buyers and a lot of people who are investors staying abroad, like the non-residents Indians, have now regained their faith to invest into India as a country. And on the face of planet Earth, the fastest growing economy with the largest customer base is India. The only thing missing was the law of the regulation. The regulation was missing. Now that piece coming in, India is the most economical country in the world as far as housing is concerned, or real estate is concerned. With RERA coming in, of course, any regulation makes the product a little expensive, but it will be a lot of safety and comfort in the minds of the investor or the buyer, who will be ensured that the delivery will be ultimately taken and monitored by the authority if the entrepreneur, called the developer or the builder, doesn't perform in time, in terms of quality, in terms of promises made. And the brochure today is considered as a promissory note. So when a brochure is printed by the builder, government has understood that this is the promise is making to the customer, and they have taken the onus to ensure that everything mentioned in the brochure actually goes to the buyer.
So you can't actually rip off beautiful looking Dubai buildings and show them as your project in India anymore. That was happening.
Builders have even stopped printing the photos of models because the buyer can demand them at the house also. So it is that serious now.
All right, you can't even have models on, well, that whole debate also happened on whether you should have celebrities endorsing your project. But Yudesh, if you could just highlight some of the key protection areas within RERA. I think we've been talking about it in India so much, but we have to assume that the audience, NRI audience, is still unclear. So for example, I just recently got a question from one gentleman, and he says, I would like to sell a project. And I said, all right, you know, he said, I want to sell it at a profit. I said, look, you bought it 2 years ago, the project is not complete. Right now, that property market has moved about 2–2.5%, but this is, you know, it will take time. So hold on to it. It's a great project. It was a Oberoi project, so one of the good developers. Next follow-up mail came, and he said, can you tell me how to exit the project? Does RERA have any provisions? I have paid 30% of the money. I'm like, okay, RERA cannot be used to exit projects, can it?
It can.
But only for new projects, isn't it?
It can. To give you an overview of what the legislation really is you already had builder-buyer agreements which were there in place earlier, and if there was a default under the builder-buyer agreement, the only forum you had a course of appeal to was the consumer forum. What RERA aims to do is, at the state level, set up an authority and set up a real estate appellate tribunal. Before a project is launched, before any monies are taken by the allottee,
right,
the promoter has to register every detail of the project, including the sanction plans, the layout plans, what he's promised in his brochure, and he has to deliver on that. Secondly, the builder-buyer agreement, which is entered into with prospective buyers, is also regulated now. There's a template which has been issued, which can be adopted and modified by the state, but the core clauses will remain the same. So that takes into consideration the developer, the promoter, the allottee, and the third person is the real estate agent. It also aims at regulating. So when you control these three verticals, you pretty much have covered the entire ambit of a real estate transaction. In terms of regulation, there's a lot more answerability for the promoter. A promoter cannot just, do what he was doing earlier. He cannot just change the project unilaterally. Say that I was giving you a swimming pool, but now in place of a swimming pool, I'm giving you a health club. In order to make any large change for a project which is registered before ERA, he needs 2/3 allottee approval. If he wants to exit a project, like you said, suppose a developer wants to abandon a project because he just does not have the funds to complete it.
If a developer wants to abandon the project, then obviously RERA will have an exit for the buyer.
He needs 2/3 allottee approval as well.
Okay.
Interestingly, suppose the developer owns 10 flats in it, it will only count as one flat. So every allottee has a say in what the developer can do and cannot do under the Act.
Does it have any teeth?
Sorry?
So one is to have rules and regulations, but like SEBI, does it have penalizing powers?
It does. Interestingly, for the first time, it provides, so there's financial penalty and then there's penal liability, which means imprisonment. Now, interestingly, imprisonment is applicable on developers, on allottees as well.
Allottees as well? Yes,
allottees as well, and real estate agents too. But the first instance of appeal lies with the authority. So if the developer is aggrieved with the allottee, he moves the authority.
The buyer is aggrieved with the...
No, suppose even the developer is aggrieved that the allottee is not making payments, or the allottee, as most cases in India, is aggrieved with the developer, he can move the authority. If he is unhappy with the decision of the authority, he can move the appellate tribunal, which is basically the equivalent of a civil court. If he's still unhappy and there's continued non-compliance, so let's say in this instance, if the developer is not complying, then there's imprisonment, which in this case of houses or projects not being delivered was unheard of earlier. Of late, there have been a lot of, because of cases of cheating and with Amrapali Group and JP Group, everybody...
But essentially NCR and these 2-3 groups.
Yes.
Where it's limited.
Very focused areas. So here we are coming out with a pan-India law where everybody is liable, and in case of continued default, they can even go to prison, and there's a dedicated regulatory system which will ensure this.
You've been dealing with a lot of developers in the community. Do you think that the industry is going to see a shakeout? Because it's in this kind of a stringent environment, Rajesh. It's not easy for small-time developers who do not have their processes in place or have been doing work in a professional manner to actually survive anymore, is there?
So, in fact, out of the 76,000 developers that India has, according to the numbers that you just spelled out, a majority of them are already into the exit route. In fact, they are looking out places like Hamria Free Zone and other places across the world where they can do investments and start other businesses. They are actually taking exit from the real estate development as a sector. The fear is to those people who don't follow the rule book. The fear is to those people who don't want to understand the rule of the land, that's all. But there are new developers coming in. There are more qualified. When I say qualified, qualification does not necessarily mean only the educational background, but the know-how of the industry and how they should be operating to the market, which will benefit the customer. So a lot of things are changing. A lot of corporates have started venturing into the housing industry and the development industry. And even RERA is not only going to be making sure that they are monitoring the progress of a developer or the happiness of a consumer, but RERA will also ensure that whatever bottlenecks a developer faces during the process of doing business, as developers, as a developer, I can go to the regulatory authority and talk to the authority that this particular department is not cooperative in terms of timelines and are creating nasty problems for me to proceed further with the development. Even in those cases, it is not only going to be helping the customer, but it is also going to be supporting the developer from government authorities to make sure that there is a full flow and cooperation for the project to go forward. So I think this is a fantastic scenario which is coming up, and with this regulation also, like you said, that the houses are being made first and then the roads are getting made. Through this kind of regulations, a lot of contribution is now happening thanks to GST and policies like RERA. A lot of contribution is happening to the government coffers, which is making sure that fast development of infrastructure is taking place, which is again a very positive note, because the infrastructure is a good environment to start your real estate development business. So these are all positive notes which are happening, and we are seeing the phase of change happening in a very, very rapid manner.
All right. This is a very important question or point that Rajesh has raised, that look, for the longest time, Yudhishth, I heard that RERA only regulates developers and probably brokers. It has nothing to regulate the buyers' bad behavior, but you said even the allottees can be taken to task by the authority because they just can't make unreasonable demands. But most importantly, I think the biggest concern that developers had was that, look what happens to municipal local bodies which give approvals, right? They are not in the ambit of RERA, so tomorrow if they're dealing up projects and we are not able to deliver in time, then we miss on our deadline, and how do we then ensure that all our commitments which have been made under RERA are met? Seems like there is some sort of a pressure, because now the developers are saying, look, whether you come under RERA or not, but we are going to go to a regulator and spill the beans in case a junior engineer in any particular municipality is asking us for money to clear the plans. So there is also, there's a larger ramification of cleaning up of the industry, even in the industry-government relationships.
Absolutely. I think one of the very valid points made by my co-panelist was that all the fraudulent fly-by-night operators, who were not serious about delivering projects. It was just a money-making scheme to announce project, take monies and not deliver. They're going to be run out of the business. They were the ones who started making a lot of payoffs to get approvals, to get sanction plans, and with demonetization also playing an important role in this. I really feel that all the fly-by-night operators are going to go off. Corruption in these government departments are going to come down. The serious, large-scale project developers are going to stick around. They're going to be able to deliver. The timelines are very stringent under the law. There's no flexibility in timelines. So if a developer approaches the authority and says, I am not getting such and such approval from, the authority has the right to question that state municipal body and say, why has this not been done? So it is I would say there are certain macroeconomic factors which have come together. Even GST, as you said, it's a pain right now. But if you look at it, GST, demonetization, and RERA coming into play is going to transform the real estate market to make it more transparent and much more structured.
I think so. I think the beginning of demonetization, Rajesh, coupled with both RERA and GST, have completely changed the landscape, isn't it? Is it true that, I mean, the numbers which I get are not more than 1,000 developers are going to survive? Is 1,000 too large a number still, you feel, for all India, or the kind of intricacies that India has? You have tiny houses to large homes being made, or that's a fair enough number for this industry to grow?
Well, I guess it will be far more than 1,000 developers, because when you talk about a population of more than 1.2 billion people, you definitely need to have a lot of suppliers in terms of homes or offices. So that's going to be the case. But like my colleague said, demonetization, RERA and GST are the game changers. The advantage is today the major input cost in any development is the land price. It's all the rest of the things that you use above the land are consumables. They are not the raw materials. The raw material is land. Because of a lot of cash component dealings which were happening in the real estate business, especially for transacting in land, the housing used to become pretty expensive. Now that scenario has changed. Land transactions are stuck. So joint ventures are started happening at the right prices because there are two less takers. So the landlord's expectations have mellowed down. When the land input cost to a development project is economical, you can really start constructing affordable houses, or you can start constructing affordable luxury. So it is becoming more economical. The prices are getting corrected. So there is two formats of real estate available in India today. One is pre-RERA, one is going to be post-RERA. The pre-RERA real estate, which is the unsold units, are again having two types of real estate. One is the real estate which has got no RERA clearance, they cannot be sold even if there is a buyer. And the second is a real estate which is unsold, which has got RERA clearance. The projects which are having RERA clearance will be sold. Those developers will make money, but they have to recorrect their prices, which have already happened. The slow sales will always give a recorrection. Ultimately, it is the buyer who benefits. The new projects post-RERA which are coming up, the land is coming at the right prices, because no more ever in India will land be purchased for development of housing or commercial properties. It will always be a joint venture between the landlord and a developer. It's going to be an effort-based activity. It is not going to be capital-intensive activity. It is going to be the knowledge of the developer of what to build, how to build, where to build, what quality to build, and what price to sell at. So I think this will dramatically change things. All the people who are invested in land don't have land buyers. So for them to monetize on their investments done, when they want the kind of multiples that they were expecting when they were the investments, can happen only through joint ventures. For developers like us who are entrepreneurs, not developers, for developers like us, it's a golden opportunity thanks to the government of India, thanks to demonetization, thanks to GST, and thanks to RERA, that we will get brilliant opportunities across the country, multiple cities, and it is a leveler. RERA is a leveler. All players, irrespective of your size, are at the same platform. Whether the guy is 10 times bigger than me or 10 times smaller than me, we have the same rules to follow, same regulations to happen, and the same market to have joint ventures happening and creating products for the masses.
I think that's a very interesting aspect that he's brought about, that, you know, it's a great leveler also. There was a time, Yudesh, that if you were a certain brand, then you could just go ahead and charge a premium. Today, you go to a RERA website, you open, I would, you know, recommend that everybody in the audience who has interest in Indian real estate actually looks at the MahaRERA website. It's a fantastic website. You just go through it. You can actually, if a developer tells you that, you know, 90 flats have been sold, go check it out on RERA website. You'll probably find only 37 flats are sold out of 120. So you know that you have some negotiating capabilities. It's literally become a buyer's market. In one word, RERA has made this a buyer's market, isn't it? Finally, now real estate is, they have to wear the hat of being sellers, of making their customer happy, of actually, you know, doing buyer-seller agreements which are not one-sided. So the scales have shifted.
I agree completely. You know, there's a very important point which was made right now, is a sense of professionalism has to come in for builders. So a builder is going to, in my view, is going to have a very administrative role going forward. He will have a contractor to develop the project, but there's going to be legal compliances, there's going to be regulatory compliances, there's going to be deliverables. For the first time, answerability is going to be a burden which is going to be put. As a lawyer, we advise developers, we advise allottees and real estate agencies as well. I mean, recently we had a meeting with a developer who was developing certain projects in Noida, and he came and he said, okay, this is where I have created defaults. I have created defaults here, I've created defaults here.
What do you mean by defaults?
Defaults is basically he's in violation of the law, or he's not delivered on certain agreements where he was contractually bound. And we literally told him, the best option for you is to leave the country. Because he had dug himself so deep that legally, so suppose he would get caught under contract law, under the Indian Contract Act, otherwise he'd go into jail for cheating. But whichever way, he was going to get penalized. Because that is the extent that developers have gone to, who were not serious about delivering on their commitments.
Has it restored some amount of faith? Because, you know, for NRIs specifically, Rajesh, they're not living in the country. They have this emotional connect. We must have a home in India, right? They have family there, they have friends there, relatives there. And sometimes they also want to go back to their country and settle down after retirement for emotional reasons. Though I wonder why anybody would want to leave Dubai and go back to India. But people do. People do, because emotional connects sometimes far supersede beautiful roads. Honestly, that's the bottom line. It is. Do you think now they should be confident that, hey, listen, whatever I'm buying in India, if it's RERA registered, I am safe?
So the last few months have been the best months for the real estate industry, for specifically me and my group, purely because RERA is our advertiser. And RERA has really classified developers into RERA compliant and RERA non-compliant categories. So RERA is not only a booster for the buyers, but RERA is also a booster for the sellers. There is a great deal of confidence in people because people living in UAE are accustomed to the law called RERA. They know how stringent it is. Like in Dubai, you can't mess up with any buyer at all. No developer has that leeway. In fact, the buyer's money is controlled by the government in the escrow account. So now the confidence of NRIs has multiplied. A lot of NRI buying has started happening, and a lot of foreign direct investments are happening in the realty sector in the country, because now they see a ray of hope and they see a brilliant opportunity waiting for them, where their entry point, thanks to the still being developed infrastructure of the country, their entry point is very nominal compared to the benefits that they can reap when the country is developing at a fast pace. So I think Maharera or RERA across the states are today promoters of the right developers. They are the advertising billboards for the right developers who follow the rules and regulations, because ultimately when a buyer goes to buy my product, when he checks my credentials on the RERA website, it is the RERA website which is giving him confidence to buy into my project. So I see government as doing free advertisements for developers who are playing by the rule book. So this is a very interesting times that we are seeing.
Absolutely. You say RERA registered and that itself becomes a marketing tool, isn't it?
Yes, 100%.
It's like the ISI benchmark. All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm sure the audience will have a couple of questions. Please bring them on. We've got one lawyer, an expert in RERA, and of course a gentleman who's been playing by the rules before, after, and will continue to do so, knows RERA inside out. Go ahead, sir. We'll just give you the mic.
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Yeah, go ahead.
What will the value for the registry permit in the RERA? Will be a carpet area or the superstructure area? What will the
Carpet area.
No, so you're saying which projects need to be registered under RERA?
No. The registration of your project has to be on carpet area as per RERA rules
In
of
terms
India.
of RERA, in terms of the definitions, carpet area is going to be considered.
carpet area?
Yeah, the traditional way of developers selling projects on saleable area and common area included in that is going to go. Now, carpet area is very clear definition. It says what is the unit area, including inner walls, which are part of the unit, and excludes the outer walls. So everything that belongs to the unit.
It will be benefit for the investor then, yeah?
Absolutely, it brings transparency. There was no common definition of what is saleable area, pan-India, and now RERA provides that.
Okay, one more question is there. Yes, I have paid the entire amount of my flat before 1st July,
Right.
right? So I have to pay the VAT now, or I have to pay the service tax on that?
Is your house complete?
Yeah, it is near completion. Billah is saying it is near completion.
I need to ask where your house is located, because all the states have a
It is
different
NCR.
take on GST.
It is
So,
in NCR region, yeah.
and then I will have to check with the CA at my firm and then get back to you.
No, but I can give you a rough answer with the experts there, and of course Rajesh can back me up on that.
Because my builder called me, yes, you pay deposit, you pay your all the dues before 1st July, otherwise you have to pay the GST at 12% or something else. While the service
So-
tax is 4.5%, I think.
No, so, but your payment, the builder would have anyway taken away 90% of your money already, right?
I have paid 100%.
So you paid 100%, so then there is not much remaining. So what is he going to charge you tax on?
He's saying for service tax we have to pay.
No, so what he's saying is right. He has paid his entire amount. So now GST is not applicable because he's done it
Service tax.
before
It's service
1st of July.
July, 1st
So he's paid the service tax, which is lower, 4.5%.
Yeah.
So he's not exposed to the risk of 12% or 18% of GST. So he's safe. His payment is done.
So I have to pay only 4.5% service tax on that, no?
If you have paid it before 1st of July, you're
Yeah,
free.
I have paid before 1st July, yes, sir.
Yes.
Because my builder was asking us to pay before 1st July, otherwise you have to pay 12%.
So that was another advantage, Manisha, of GST coming up, because a lot of developers who had all permissions in place really collected the outstandings under
Yeah.
the threat of
Yes,
GST.
12%, yes. They were
So
saying
because there is a
12%
difference between 4.5% to 12%.
Yes, 8% we were saving.
Yeah, so you are saving quite a sizable amount. So a lot of developers also became immediately cash rich
Yeah.
for the units which were sold, and outstanding payments were there, which were as per the work progress. A lot of buyers, out of anxiety of saving that 6.5%, 7.5% or 8%, really actually paid up the outstanding amount and flushed the developers with money, which is now being controlled by RERA to complete the same project.
Yeah.
We hope so. It's being controlled by RERA.
Yes, they were saying choice is yours. You want to pay 12% or 4.5%.
Correct.
So
So right now what is happening is that we in fact I only get to know what's happening with the questions that we get. The developers in early stage projects are also giving buyers two options because there's still, not great clarity on input tax credits, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So developers are actually going and telling buyers, you could opt for no change in taxation, that is zero GST impact, or you could say that, look, whatever, I will opt for GST with input credits, right? So a lot of good professional developers are actually leaving it to the buyer. Because if you look at service tax plus VAT earlier and GST, more or less it's like 10.5%, 11% it was earlier, and now it's 12%, right? So there's not that much of an impact. So if you want to be completely safe, you can opt for zero tax. That's only for early stage projects. But you can also opt for GST with input credit. What would
those
your
projects
answer
which
be
are
to that?
about
No,
to complete
so
now.
there is a point to differ over here, Manisha. What's happening is GST is a different act altogether. It's not, so the developer is making it as a selling tool to absorb that GST, or threatening it that if you don't close by this and this time, I will make GST applicable. And GST is much higher compared to the service tax.
Yeah.
Service tax was almost 4.5%, whereas your GST is 12%. They say 18%, but if you technically calculate, it comes to around, it comes to around 12%. So GST is definitely higher, and today nobody can escape GST. Somebody is paying for the GST. Either the customer is paying for the GST or the developer is paying for the GST. The GST decision depends on the urgency of the developer to sell his pending stock, his requirement for the money. It is situational. So a developer might say, okay, although the GST is 12%, I will exempt you if you take the buying decision today. So for the buyer, it is a 12% discount. So it all depends on the decision and the strategy that individual developer is taking according to the scenario that he is in. As far as GST is concerned, GST has to be paid. Whether it is developer or whether it is customer, doesn't matter. The government wants GST.
Okay, great. That's
Okay, thank you, sir.
clarified.
Yeah, my question to both of you. Whenever we see any regulation, so my name is Rohit Raul, I'm from Mumbai, and I myself a developer. See, whenever the new regulation comes into place, not pointing finger directly at you, but where the professionals are the people who actually they start showing the loopholes. So how foolproof is the RERA? And another question to Rajesh. Looking at the entire scenario in the interest of the buyers as well as the developers, do you really think there are some conditions need to be softened by the government in the interest of both the parties?
The RERA conditions, okay, you take the first one.
I think in terms of the central legislation and the rules developed by the states, there are a lot of gray areas even now. There are many gray areas. One I was advising on this afternoon is, whether web portals such as Magic Bricks, 99 acres, which are themselves now hundreds of crores worth of individual businesses, need to register themselves as real estate agents because they serve as a platform for two people to connect and sell properties online. And then they also advertise properties on behalf of developers. There are a lot of gray areas which the Ministry of Urban Affairs really needs to be forthcoming and keep coming out with FAQs, frequently asked question and answers. There are a lot of, I wouldn't say there are loopholes. There's just no clarity on fronts. If you look at the legislation itself, it's a very well drafted legislation. The framework is in place. As far as teething issues and gray areas are concerned, especially in relation to definition of ongoing projects, the play on this completion certificate and occupancy certificate, I think the Ministry of Urban Affairs needs to be very proactive and be forthcoming in giving us clarifications in relation to these.
I think you're completely protected if it's a new project. If it's 70–80% done and it's under construction, already delayed, it's still a gray area. There are a couple of gray areas which have to be cleared by the ministry.
So another question was to Rajesh. Any specific condition you feel that they need to be softened in the interest of both the parties?
Well, one calculation which has gone wrong, because of which home buying has become a little expensive, because GST is 18% and for land they have set of 6%. The value of land changes from location to location, city to city.
Yeah.
The price of land in Bombay and the price of land in, for example, Jaipur or in Ahmedabad will be different, but they have kept the same benchmark. So that's financially a big hit to the buyer. Ultimately, it is the buyer who's going to be paying it. So that's a calculation which has gone wrong. As far as the other question that you were asking, whether the professionals give loopholes to the developers to commit mistakes so that they are not caught and they make a premium on a project which has got lesser profits if not done. So for that, I would always suggest every buyer that like a developer has a profile and has a goodwill or a bad will, similarly, professionals also get identified in a similar light. So always check out who the professionals are involved with a particular project. Always ask two questions. Who is the law firm with the company, the developer company, and who's the architect with the developer company? The development business will rest on these two professionals. So there are professionals who have got extraordinary goodwill in the market, and where you can be assured that if this is the law firm for this particular project, eyes closed, go ahead and do the transaction, irrespective of RERA. Now today, RERA is in place and it supersedes everything. But as a general benchmark, whenever you need to say that so-and-so is the law firm and so-and-so is the architect, there you can make a decision whether you want to invest or not invest. It was actually a helping tool.
Thank you.
All right. We've got time to take 2 more questions, so let's quickly. No? Okay, one question.
Hello, I am Sudhir Ambadekar, architect from Mumbai. I have a question to Yudish.
Yes.
You said developers are bound by RERA.
Right.
Will they be able to take disadvantage of by shouldering their on local authorities delay, and for that delay is happening in the project? Then where buyers stand in this all scenario?
Right.
And lastly, and important from my point of view, I am a professional architect, where the professional is safe in this all activity by RERA.
I think professionals are going to benefit the most, lawyers mostly, from this new legislation.
Look at him, his smile is getting
and
bigger
we
and
are.
bigger.
I hope you all become clients.
No, architects are not safe. Architects and structural engineers and chartered accountants are not safe.
No, but they have a dominant role. Every time money is taken out of the separate bank account, he has to give
Only
an approval.
only the lawyers are safe.
Huh.
Not technical, because there is a self-auditing system which is in place. So when a developer wants to withdraw money from the escrow account, he needs to get certified by the architect, by the structural engineer and the chartered accountant. The chartered accountant cannot be his regular auditor, he should be an external auditor. If these 3 people or any one of them try to manipulate the documents just for the withdrawal of the money by the developer, he will be criminally held responsible for that transaction, and this can be opened up on any customer's complaint, or the authority can also have a suo motu opportunity to open up a case if they come to know about it and file suits against the professional and also the developer. So it's a fantastic foolproof system where the buyer is totally, in totality protected. So the architect is exposed not only to irregularities in the structure, those days are gone, that cannot be done now, corporations are very strict, but even for certifications for faster withdrawals of money is going to be a criminal action on the professional.
But that is only in the case of someone not delivering. I believe under RERA, if everybody sticks to their obligations and does their role, it's a mutually beneficial law. It will regulate this industry. For instance, if on the title of land, a lawyer has to sign off under RERA, it's a statutory requirement. Now, if I had to draft a diligence report and I do something crafty, then I am also liable, just as the CA is. So as long as everybody is working transparently and in a structured manner under the Act, I think this Act can really transform the...
There is still a loophole in this. The loophole is, the whole Act of RERA is purely created so that the project funds from one project cannot be diverted to some other project. Now, just because you are going by the rule book does not permit you to withdraw money before the due stage. Now, project is going fine, but he is withdrawn money before the due stage. He is completing the project on time. Even then, it is not legally right for him to withdraw money before his turn of withdrawal. Now, to do that, if the professionals help him with the certification, then they are in the wrong. The professionals are in the wrong. So, it's like whether you know or not, you cannot withdraw the money out of turn.
So
Absolutely.
what I'm sensing is that the buyers are safe. For once.
Yes,
And after
yes,
all.
yes.
So all of these guys, whether it's a developer, architect, lawyer, chartered accountant, they can all be held responsible. Buyers will get their flats.
And
so,
at least you know if you're investing into a project, your money is only being
Money
used
is
in
going
that
to be
project.
saved.
It's not being parked somewhere else.
yes, diverted.
And that was the biggest problem.
Yes.
Hi,
On-
good evening. I just wanted to know how RERA can help guys who have already bought flats. For example, I give my instance, I bought a flat in Bangalore. The developer is one of the very top, possibly the top 5 corporate entities. Still, what they had promised at the time of development, at the time of purchase, and what they have developed, what they have delivered, there is a gap.
But
How RERA can help? What are the options available to people like us?
It's very simple. Under the central legislation, the trigger is, does your project have a completion certificate? Then under the state rules, you have to see whether you fall within the ambit of an ongoing project. If you are not within the ambit of an ongoing project and your project does not have a completion certificate, you can move the real estate regulatory authority of the state and ask them that this is what was promised, this is the evidence of what was promised by the developer, and it has not been provided. So there are two triggers. A, does your project have a completion certificate? And B, does it fall within the ambit of an ongoing project under the rules of the state?
Just to clarify, the project is completed, we are living there actually.
That's
Then-
fine.
then-
Possession is not a trigger.
no,
Thank you.
but if they've got their completion
It
certificate,
depends on the
how does
state
it matter?
rules. It depends on the
Karnataka
state.
completion certificate is considered, no? Yudhishth?
So in Bombay,
The
even
point
if-
is very clear here. The developer has managed to get the completion certificate.
Yeah.
He has
And
got
it
the
is-
completion
So, but
certificate. Then he's
anyhow,
out of-
sir, what
then
you can do is
ask.
send us a question. We are totally running out of time. I know that a lot of you have invested and will have issues. This gentleman, I will have to take one question. He's been actually...
Thank you so much. Thank
yes, very quickly. No, you can still go to RERA. You can still go to RERA.
In this case, I would advise, if you feel that you cannot bring proceedings against the promoter company which is held liable for this, you should still move the consumer forum. It is still very much a valid tribunal. You should move the consumer forum and simply say that this is what was represented to us in terms of our builder-buyer agreement, and this is what has not been delivered to us.
Final question.
Does water and electricity form a part of their offering?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The most fundamental part of
What
it.
happens if the government, this local state government, is playing, let's say, a hurdle in the sense that they're not approving?
It is up to the authority, because as a consumer, as an allottee, you can approach the courts or you can approach an authority. It is up to them to take cognizance of the situation and approach the municipal bodies and understand what is going on and what is not going on. In terms of the developer's obligation to provide these basic amenities to you, it has to be enforced.
Can you hand over a property without water connection?
Without water
anymore,
and
but
electricity,
you
you should
could.
not be getting an occupancy certificate in the first place. So it would be very surprising how a developer...
All of Haryana provisional occupation certificates condition to rules have already been given. All right, let's not go to the past. We are just hoping that the future,
But the law
future is safer for buyers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Agnur,
thank you.
Rajesh and Yudhishth.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
gentlemen,
Manisha.
for being-